Deemed rehabilitated and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. I appreciate you tuning in today. This is your daily source of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. I appreciate you tuning in. Guys, here's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about courageous conservatism. I framed this the other day as confrontational conservatism, and I think I went about it the wrong way. So I want to rephrase that. And I want to talk to you about what I'm calling courageous conservatism. And it came to mind after I had a conversation with my daughter. If you listened to me on my Gallagher show earlier, you may have heard some of this, but I didn't get to complete this list. I was really frustrated at what I saw transpire last week. And that is where a lot of these Republicans, the 20 House Republicans, the 20 heroes, in my opinion, were thrown under the bus, even by conservative media, or Republican media, Republican outlets, you would think, on the radio and on television. And it threw me for a loop. I was absolutely surprised because all of the things that we had said for years that we wanted as conservatives, we wanted the House to produce, a lot of these Freedom Caucus members were fighting for, and yet they were getting pilloried as a result of it. And one of the words that kept coming up over and over again was the word embarrassing, embarrassing, embarrassment, embarrassed. And I just sat there and I was shocked. I was shocked because I felt like for some reason, maybe we suffer from Stockholm syndrome. I mean, you get beat enough, but you keep going back to that, what you're used to, or that person that you love, or that you're used to for the sake of comfort. And I feel like that's what was happening last week. You had 20 Republicans, regardless of their motives. It really doesn't matter. I've heard a lot of conservatives, Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert, it was personal. And so what? So what? What matters are the results. And the fact that they were willing to take arrows, including from moderates and rhinos, in order to get things done that we needed. And it just, I could not get past it. But I had this conversation with my daughter one day when I was picked her up from work. She had to get some work done to her car. So I picked her up, and she just started expressing to me how at her job, it seems like people have become meaner. And it wasn't the people at her job per se, but it was customers. And she just said, Dad, I noticed over the last couple of years, it seems as a result of these lockdowns, and I'm paraphrasing here, that people have just become meaner. I would always get customers, she said, where you will get a customer or maybe two per day that would just kind of just be so obnoxious and mean and rude. But she said, but it's all the time now. I mean, calls that they get in, and the people that come into her establishment where she works, it's just all the time. And she attributed that to the lockdowns. People maybe just frustrated, and maybe they got used to dealing with people online and not, having superficial conversations and not face to face, but they just got meaner and meaner and meaner. And she said for a long period of time, she went ahead and just basically took it. It's the customer's always right type of mentality. And then eventually she said, you know what? I just got to the point where I decided one day that I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to be nasty per se, but I am going to go back at them and let them know, call them on what they're doing. So one particular lady either called the store or came in, I believe called, I can't recall, and was just very rude and very nasty to her. She wanted to speak to someone else. There was a specific person that she was used to dealing with. That person was out for the day. My daughter was like, hey, listen, I'd be more than happy to help you, so on, et cetera. The lady got really nasty towards her for no apparent reason. And she decided that she would either walk away or put the lady on hold. I believe I recall that it was a call, because I believe she put the lady on hold and said, listen, I'm just going to have you wait until you calm down, or something to that effect. She comes back on. The lady is still a little nasty. And then she does the same thing again. And she asked the lady, I'm a person, right? I'm a human being, right? And obviously the implication is listen, man, treat me right. Treat me with some respect. Treat me with some dignity. I wouldn't treat you in that way. You know, how you're acting is rude. And, you know, and she went on with, you know, with this lady and just explained, listen, I may have a job to do and I'm more than willing to help you, but you need to understand that I'm a person too. I have feelings too. You need to respect that. Don't talk to people in just any type of way. So disrespectfully, so on, etc. She put the lady on hold again. or walked away. Now, eventually she came back. It wasn't a long time. She comes back and she said, okay, I can help you now. And all she didn't just arbitrarily do that. She walked and decided to help another customer that wasn't so rude and so nasty. And so this person comes back on eventually, and then she apologizes. And then my daughter went on to say that she shared with the woman, you know what? I appreciate the apology, but you shouldn't have done that. In other words, she wanted to make her point clear to this lady so that this lady got it, so that she understands this behavior is inexcusable. And she decided to do that after making a stand. She said she was just going to be courageous. She was going to be brave with these people. She had had enough. And so after she did that, the lady apologized again. And my daughter said she's done that. She's had to do that a few times until people get the point, until they learn to calm down, and until they learn to treat her with respect. Now, obviously, in some job scenarios, you can't do that. Apparently, she's been able to work her way into a position where she's valuable in that sense, but still, she could be in danger of being fired. But she just said it just got so bad, I simply could not take the abuse anymore, and that's me using the word abuse. So she decided to make a stand. She decided to be courageous, even though it could have cost her job. These people were courageous. The 7 people were courageous. The people that were embarrassing, because that's the word that I heard overwhelmingly, even from conservative pundits that I respect. Embarrassing, embarrassing, embarrassing. Well, I'm about to give you a list of embarrassments, real embarrassments from the House Democrats that we seem to forget about. It's amazing as Republicans and as conservatives, we can go after each other all the time, but we forget about the embarrassment that the Democrat Party has heaped upon this country. And I want to get into that. But first, before I do, I want to ask you to please check out my sponsor, mypillow.com. Right now, they have a fabulous deal available with My Towels. My Towels, towels that actually work to dry you. I have some of these towels. They're absolutely amazing. They are my favorite towels. I'm not lying to you. There's a 6-piece towel set that includes 2 bath towels, 2 hand towels, 2 washcloths. They come in a variety of colors. Right now, they're on special for only $39.98 for a 6-piece set. All you have to do is use the promo code CARL. That's CARL. Go to mypillow.com. Use that promo code. You get a 10-year warranty, 60-day money back guarantee. Just use the promo code CARL. Also, you can go to or you can give them a call, 1-800-858-0263. So mypillow.com or 1-800-858-0263. You're talking about American jobs, American manufacturing. That's what we need to bring back to this country. Not only that, you get great products. So mypillow.com, use the promo code Carl. And also, please follow me on social media, The Carl Jackson Show. Please remember to use the word "the" in front. So The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me on social media. Getter and Twitter, I think it's just Carl Jackson Show. But if you put The Carl Jackson Show, it will show up. So please do that. I would very much so appreciate it. And of course, subscribe to the podcast wherever podcasts are found. Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, wherever you go, I should be there. So please subscribe there, like, share, and review it. That goes a long way. Give us a 5, please. We'd really appreciate it. All right. Now, so why were we embarrassed of these 20? Because the media, because the left was telling us that we should be embarrassed. These people that have no moral underpinning whatsoever. We should be concerned about what the left thinks about us, about what the Democrat Party thinks about us, the party of abortion, the party that likes censoring people, the party that likes taking your hard-earned money away, the party of open borders, the party that's making our military weak, the party that's selling some of our oil to China. We should be, and we should care about what they think. Are you for real? It makes no sense to me. And yet many on the right did just that. Moderates, in the party, conservatives in the party. It's because they don't understand the fight that we're in. They don't understand our opponent. They don't understand that our opponent doesn't give a darn about their feelings and how they think. Our opponents want to win. And we haven't come to that realization, not enough of us anyway, in the Republican Party. And that's why you only saw 20, what they're calling holdouts, but I would say heroes that fought for us, that fought for we the people last week. And I'm going to bring this topic up over and over and over again, because you need to understand election is coming up in 2 years, and there's some people that's got to go because they're not in it for you. And that's not to say that some of the 200 that voted along with Speaker McCarthy and didn't make it uncomfortable for him, that was democracy in play, by the way. That wasn't an embarrassment. That has been the history of the House for over 200 years until Nancy Pelosi broke it. All they did essentially is return to the way things used to be. Regular order is what they call it. And the right, I don't care about the left, the right went haywire. Oh my God, they look like fools. They look like fools. They're such an embarrassment. It was insane. And it just proved to me that the right, many on the right, really aren't up to the fight that we're in. They really don't understand our opponent. I heard someone use the term controlled opposition. That's exactly what it is. They'll go so far. They'll oppose them so far, but they can't cross this line. It's a shame. It's a shame. Anyway, so I want to know what's embarrassing about getting a vote on border security. I want to know what's embarrassing about getting a budget that doesn't allow the debt ceiling to increase when we're $32 trillion in debt right now. I want to know what's embarrassing about that. I want to know what's embarrassing about putting an end to the COVID mandates and the funding the Democrats are using to pad blue cities and to pad their horrible policies in their states when they spend too much doggone money. I want to know what's horrible about that. I want to know what's embarrassing. I want to know what's embarrassing about single subject bills. I've yet to hear this from the whiny panickers that were on the right last week. I want to know what's embarrassing about allowing 72 hours to actually read a bill. Something that doesn't happen now. Our congressmen and women are, the leadership goes in a back room. They make a deal and then they come out and say, you guys got to vote for this 4,000 page bill that no one knows what's in it except the leadership themselves. And they filled it with a bunch of pork. I want to know what's embarrassing about saying, no, we're not going to tolerate these big, huge omnibus bills anymore. We want a single subject bill and we want to be able to read it 72 hours to be able to read it so that we know what the heck we're voting for. What's embarrassing about that? What's embarrassing is that actual Republicans and so-called conservatives were sitting around and shaming 20 Republicans that were actually saving the country after a horrible midterm election, thanks to Ronna McDaniel, Mitch McConnell, and yes, Kevin McCarthy. We should be thanking these people and lauding them as heroes. I don't care about their motives. I care about the results. They got results that we haven't seen in decades. We've not seen conservatives in office accomplish so much in Congress in quite some time. I mean, we had a drought of conservatism between Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. And there were times where I liked George W. Bush, and then I look back and I look at the results and I'm like, man, not as good as I thought. Results matter. All right. What's embarrassing about introducing a motion to be able to vacate the speakership when the leader of your party makes a bunch of promises to you and doesn't keep them, or puts people on certain select committees that are rhinos that will only vote his way, a vote according to his way, instead of listening to the representatives that represent all of us? What's embarrassing about that? There's nothing embarrassing about that. Now, let me share with you what is embarrassing, where we should be focusing. We should know our opponents. This is what's embarrassing. This is real embarrassment. House Democrats that are the real embarrassment. Hat tip to Shane Harris at AMAC. He wrote a fabulous column putting this stuff into perspective. right? So we were embarrassed, or some of you were embarrassed, because Republicans took 15 votes to get it right. The negotiations with Speaker McCarthy wasn't embarrassing at all. That's what we call democracy, all right? That's actual democracy at play. That's not embarrassing. That's how it should look every year, frankly, or every couple of years. That's how it should look. Now, here's what's embarrassing. We're going to go to the Democrats. This is where we should focus. Instead of calling those 20 heroes holdouts and an embarrassment to the party, understand who the real embarrassment are. We've got to wake up, Republicans. If you want to save this country, stop listening to the left-wing media tell you who the embarrassing people are. The Democrat Party is a complete and utter embarrassment. Look at what they've done to the country. We're divided. The country's woke. Corporations are woke, to use a blanket, broad term, all-encompassing, CRT, DEI, trans, all of that stuff. ESG scoring. No, Republicans never ended a prayer on the House floor by saying amen and a woman. That was done by Emanuel Cleaver, Democrat Emanuel Cleaver. Now, never mind the fact that amen is a Hebrew term used after prayers to express agreement. But he says amen and a woman as if it's a man and a woman. And maybe he wasn't dumb enough to, maybe he was just doing that as a play on words. It could be a double entendre. Maybe it is. I don't know. But here's what you need to understand. God isn't impressed with wokeness. We're not embarrassed about that. Remember Ilhan Omar. Thank God she's been kicked off her committee. I'll get into this tonight on the Officer Tatum show. All right. So Ilhan Omar, we can say this: a House Republican has never been under investigation for marrying her brother in order to skirt U.S. immigration law. All right. No Republican has done that. That's embarrassing. What about a man can get pregnant? You had several House members, Democratic House members, that said men can get pregnant. Do you know any men that are pregnant? That's the embarrassment. What about cultural appropriation, right? That's a big issue with Democrats. You remember when House Democrats shamelessly done these, what are they called? Those Kente cloths. They took a knee in Congress in an act of identity politics, basically following the death of George Floyd for protest's sake. It was really just a photo op. You had Nancy Pelosi in a Kente cloth. You had Steny Hoyer. You had all of the big lefties trying to culturally appropriate, as the left would call it. And it was all a photo op. They did this to honor George Floyd. Of course, you guys may remember that their policies are also responsible for the billions of dollars, if I recall correctly, of property damage that we saw during the George Floyd and the Antifa riots. Not to mention the rise in violence that ensued afterwards. They're not taking credit for that. What about camping out on the Capitol steps? You guys remember when Cori Bush of the Squad camped out on the Capitol steps, crying crocodile tears? We haven't seen Republicans doing that. What about calling for defunding the police while spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on your own personal security, like members of the Squad did, or Cori Bush did? What about calling for abolishing federal prisons and releasing violent criminals back onto the streets? How do you like that in California and New York? How do you like that? What about Democrats, as soon as they get into office, passing a bunch of radical bills that nobody elected them to pass, including federalizing elections, packing the Supreme Court, adding Washington, D.C. as the 51st state? Nobody voted for that. What about imposing the trans ideology on every single American and student from kindergarten or K through 12 in college? How about that? And even into boardrooms nowadays. What about Nancy Pelosi basically saying any abortion restrictions are sinful? Is that embarrassing? This is what we should be embarrassed of. We should be embarrassed of this Democrat Party. I haven't even mentioned Afghanistan and that debacle. And our military going completely woke as a result of the Democrats being in charge of everything. Is that embarrassing? When Vladimir Putin was pulling out videos of his soldiers pumping iron and doing push-ups and asking for the best of the best and the strong men that want to be fight and be patriots. And then we have commercials because of the left talking about Susie has 2 moms and Susie is in the military or some nonsense like that. What about AOC? She showed up at the Met Gala, a $30,000 event, with a dress that said tax the rich. She was too dumb to understand that that was complete irony. What about that? Are we embarrassed of that? At the same event, as a matter of fact, she was allowed to go maskless, as were all of the elites, but all of their little servants, the waiters, waitresses, so on, etc. They had to wear masks because they can't be trusted to breathe fresh air, you know? Nancy Pelosi caught on tape in a hair salon during lockdowns that she called for and Gavin Newsom called for. You remember Gavin Newsom's son being caught at a camp playing basketball outside, doing all this kind of stuff? That's the stuff that should be embarrassing for Democrats. That's the stuff that we should be pointing out, not pointing out 20 Republicans that just possibly saved the country because Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, and Ronna McDaniel contributed to the loss of it. What about when Pelosi ripped up Trump's 2020 State of the Union speech? You embarrassed about that? She was sitting there fiddling the entire time, knew she was planning it, and at just the right moment, she needed to be seen, so she ripped it up. What about the year prior to that? You remember this, the year prior, the State of the Union prior, when President Trump announced record low unemployment numbers for blacks and for Latinos, as well as initiatives to care for veterans. Remember that? And Democrats stood on their hands. They can't have low black unemployment. They can't have low Latino unemployment because that means they won't get votes. So they didn't clap. They'd rather blacks and Latinos be in misery. They rather our veterans be in misery. You're not embarrassed about that? What about this? What about the limited attendance at the 2022 State of the Union because the Democrats still wanted to play the COVID game? Only 50 people in attendance. But a few days later, they lifted the requirement just a few days later. They just did that because they wanted to keep that COVID gravy train going, that fear, that optical illusion, if you will. Remember Nancy Pelosi, that same State of the Union, caught rubbing her knuckles. Unbelievable, acting like a little monkey. It's weird. Eric Swalwell. Actually, it was Joe Biden's State of the Union. I apologize. But rubbing her knuckles like a little monkey. It was the weirdest thing. Eric Swalwell. You embarrassed about him? Sleeping with the enemy, literally sleeping with the enemy? You're not embarrassed about that? Those are all Democrats. What about this J6 kangaroo court? You demonize 75 million Americans. You got a couple of hundred that go into the Capitol building. We now know, based upon video evidence, many of them ushered in. Many of them brought into this dragnet of geofencing where most were just peacefully going into the building, walking through the building, but the FBI and DOJ are going to go after them anyway. What about AOC lying about her experience during the J6 riot when she was nowhere in danger, saying she was, scared for her life and hiding behind a desk or some nonsense like that? Completely lied. Not embarrassed about that? I think we should be embarrassed about who the Democrat Party has become instead of being embarrassed about people, 20 Republicans that have literally made it possible where we can't go into more exorbitant debt without any accountability. They placed this Holman rule in place where if you get a government bureaucrat that's out of control, you can't impeach that person, but you can say, we're only going to pay you a couple of bucks to stay in this spot. Oh, okay, I'm not working for $2 a year, so I'm bouncing. That's power. They're giving you power back. So now we can call and say, hey, what they're doing, this bureaucratic agency, we didn't vote for them. You guys need to squash that. See, we have a say now. We have a say now. So the 20 Republicans aren't an embarrassment, and they weren't holdouts. They were heroes. Well, they did hold out, but for the right reasons. You were blessed as a result of their courage. We've got to be courageous conservatives. What about Democrats ignoring the border communities with the open borders? They want these open borders, and you have these border communities where people are struggling, where people are scared to go outside of their homes because illegal aliens are literally coming right onto their properties, in some cases, right up to their doors, windows, so on, etc. Imagine being in that position. Strangers, you don't know what their worldview is. You don't know what they're capable of. Up at your door, looking to get in. Can you imagine that? You guys aren't embarrassed of that? What about the Democrats in pursuing 2 hoax impeachment trials that we all knew were a fraud? The Russia collusion hoax and then Ukraine. And then when we go through this lengthy trial and it's proven that there was no Russia collusion hoax, Democrats still don't know, because the news sites that they look at don't even talk about it. That's not embarrassing. That's Democrat stuff. What about Pelosi when she read a poem from U2 from U2's Bono on the House floor as a way to kind of I don't know, support the war, the Ukraine war, or our proxy war using Ukraine against Russia? What about violence of the Supreme Court justices? Remember Brett Kavanaugh? You had a crazy man that bought into the left nonsense about Brett Kavanaugh, and he came to assassinate him. And you had the Democrats that didn't even want to fund security for our Supreme Court justices. You guys aren't embarrassed about that? You're embarrassed about the people that gave you a little more freedom in the House. We got to stop acting like this. We have to understand our enemy. For those of us that are on the right, we've got to, I'm sorry, that's a strong term. We have to understand our opponent. Now, I do believe the left is an enemy of the state. But many Democrats are our opponents. But we need to understand who they are, and we need to not back down and be courageous and not be ashamed to be conservatives. Trying to acquiesce to the left. People that are morally bankrupt makes no sense whatsoever. Makes no sense whatsoever. Remember the supply chain crisis? Remember the that we had during the lockdowns? Pete Buttigieg taking time off with his partner and new babies that they adopted as if he actually gave birth or something. Unbelievable. And we just saw the problems that occurred today with FAA or you know, air traffic interruptions for a couple of hours today. Yeah, Democrats are on top of it. We should be embarrassed of them. We should be embarrassed of them. Be embarrassed of the Democrat Party. Don't be embarrassed of Republicans that did a great thing by, again, getting a vote on border security, by also a budget that doesn't allow debt ceilings to increase, and end to COVID mandates so we can stop this madness. Term limits, single subject bills, 72 hours to read a bill. You're embarrassed about that. If you're embarrassed about that, I would argue this. You don't understand the fight that we're in. And it breaks my heart because I don't want to lose America. And our hope for America is, I believe, in our Judeo-Christian values, biblical worldview, God, our creator. I believe that to be Jesus Christ. And also in our Constitution and the people that abide by the Constitution and the rule of law. So don't be embarrassed about those 20 Republicans that stood up for you because they believe in God, family, country, and the middle class. And frankly, that's what they stood up for that day. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Again, please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. I would really appreciate it. Also, find me on social media, The Carl Jackson Show. Don't forget, please, MyPillow. They have that 6-piece towel special, $39.98. $39.98. All you have to do is go to mypillow.com, click on that radio listener square at the top of the page, all right, or give them a call, 1-800-858-0263. And until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless.